Good morning, everyone. How are you? I am here by myself today doing this Facebook. And if you have been with us, you know the drill. Please give us a shout out, give me a shout out, and let me know we're live because I hate talking to myself. And that's not going to happen. I'm just going to wait till I hear from one of you so I can know that we are live and we are good and we're ready to go. We have a very important topic today because so many of you have written in with questions. Your hearts are heavy, your head hurts, you're in an emotionally destructive marriage and you're not sure of your choices. And so I want to talk about that this morning or this afternoon or wherever you are in the world. I want to talk about that with you, just you and me. And we're going to talk about what choices do you have? So if you are with me and we are connected in cyberspace in some way, could you just let me know and give a shout out and say, I'm here. Yes, I see you. We're live so that we can go forward and do our talk. Tasha, thank you so much. So need these lives. It is life-giving. Thank you. Thank you. You know, we love helping women all over the world with their relationship struggles because sometimes the information that they're given by their local church or even their Christian counselor may be a little off. There may be a lot of truth to it, but a little off at times. And so we want to give you real truth unfiltered. And I do have a podcast. I've never advertised that on Facebook per se in terms of my voice, but we do have a podcast that we release every Monday called Relationship Truth Unfiltered. And we have all kinds of teaching on that from me. And we also have guests. We just recently had a guest on trauma and how do you heal from trauma. We also hear from women who've been in destructive relationships and how they have taken that healing journey. So if you like podcasts and you like taking a walk and listening to things, it's Relationship Truth Unfiltered. And you can find that on Apple Podcast or Spotify. But hello, everyone. Hello. I see that you're here. Tasha says, I listened to all multiple times. Well, thank you, Tasha. I appreciate that. So we're going to be talking about what choices do you have? Do you have choices? I want to just preface it by saying that God created you to be a choosing being. He created you with choice. That is part of your DNA as a human being. All right. He didn't create us as robots. We are not AI, artificial intelligence. We are flesh and blood human beings, and we have choice. From the very beginning, God gave Adam and Eve a choice to listen to him, to not listen to him, to obey him, to not obey him. And every choice has consequences. Some of them are big and some of them are small. Some of them bring us good. Some of them bring us harm for sure. But all of us have choices. Right? And we need to recognize that we have choices to make. And some of us make healthy choices and some of us might make unhealthy choices. But even when we make wrong choices, there's usually always time to correct. Now, some of you have been with me over the week and you've seen this painting come to life. She's nowhere near done yet. I have a number of other layers to put on her, but I noticed something as I got this color layer on it. When she was black and white and she was blue and white and blue and purple, I didn't quite see it, but I made a big mistake. Can anybody see what the mistake is in her face? So the big mistake, if you haven't seen it, is her eye. The right-hand side, the right eye, as I'm looking at her right now, her right eye is too far over to the side. It's not close enough to her nose. I didn't notice that when I drew it. I didn't notice that when I first started painting. But now that the rest of her features are coming into focus, her eye is not in the right place. Well, what does that mean? I have choices, right? And I've got to white out her eye and repaint that part and move her eye over. And I will do that. And hopefully by Monday, you'll see a better eye. But my point is, we have to make choices. And I made choices to keep painting until I realized, I've got to stop. And now I've got to make a correction. And this is really important so that even if you've been in the habit of making some poor choices, information gives you like ding, 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 or your eyes see something, or your body feels something, or your weight goes up, or whatever happens, you see that you're not making the best choices, right? And you have choices to make. The worst decision is no choice, of staying stuck. So I want to talk to those specifically to you today who are in hard marriages or in hard places. Life is hard. It is hard. And maybe it's not your fault, but it's hard. And this is where you get hung up. When life is hard, so we've talked about this external, internal. So when life is hard on the external, and we feel stressed out, or we feel hurt, or we feel betrayed on the inside, what often happens is we wait. We get stuck and say, well, if only that didn't happen on the external, if only he didn't cheat on me, if only he'd stop watching porn, if only he'd be nice to me, if only he wouldn't yell at the kids like he does, if only he wouldn't gamble our money away, then I wouldn't feel this way. I wouldn't be so stuck. I wouldn't be in such a depressed state. I wouldn't be so angry. Who can relate? Yeah, if the traffic would just move smoother, I would be a wonderful patient driver, right? I mean, we all think that way. And your husband thinks that way too, right? He's going to say things like, if only you didn't argue with me, if only you did what I wanted, if only you had sex 5 times a day, if only you would let me have a threesome and you'd be happy, whatever he's saying, I'd be fine and we'd be fine. It's not true. It's not true, right? There's a smidgen of truth to that if everything in life went the way that exactly how we wanted, we wouldn't probably get as angry or frustrated as we do. But the reality says life doesn't do that for us. Our external world doesn't cooperate with our agenda at times, and that creates internal distress. So what choices do we have? When the external world is hard, it's traumatic, it's oppressive, it's destructive, it's hurtful, all of the above. We're not denying reality. Okay, so here you are, you're in icky. You are in icky. What choices do you have? And we're going to explore that today. And we're going to look at healthy choices, and we're going to look at unhealthy choices. And let's just talk maybe theoretically or a little bit externally. My husband was telling me today about a World War II story. I love World War II. I read a lot of stuff on World War II. I'm just amazed at the courage of people who lived in a war. We've never in the United States lived in a war where our towns were being bombed or our children were being harmed. We've never had to go through that, but I'm amazed at the spirit and the resilience and the courage of people in those situations. And if we could be in that kind of situation in our country where Christians are being oppressed or Christians are being hauled off to concentration camps, just like the Jews were in Adolf Hitler's regime. And here they are in concentration camps. They didn't have a choice. There they were. They didn't have a choice. They're in these concentration camps. But did they have a choice while they were in the concentration camps? How many of you think yes? And how many of you think no? Did they have a choice in the concentration camps about how their internal was going to be? Or who they were going to be? Tell me, what do you think? Yes or no? Did they have a choice about who they were internally? Yes, yes. Okay, and they had healthy choices and they had unhealthy choices, right? What would be some healthy choices while they were when they were trapped? They couldn't get out right now. So that wasn't a choice. You see, sometimes we don't think we have our favorite choice. Like, I just want to get to the airport on time. That's the choice. And that's not happening. I just want him to change, and he's not changing. I just want him to love me, and he's not loving you. I just want it to stop, and it's not stopping. Right? When those choices aren't your options, what are your choices? What are your choices? What would be some of their choices while they're stuck in the camp? What would be some of their choices while they're stuck in the camp? What do you think? So I'm having a hard time. Oh, here. I guess like Corrie ten Boom, focused on getting closer to the Lord. All right, so that would be one choice, is to trust God. Focus on our source of true hope. We could focus on our misery. It's not hard to focus on our misery. That's normal, right? And we are miserable. So I'm not denying that, right? So if you had misery in your left hand, let's do this together. So if you take misery, whatever the misery is in your life, my husband doesn't love me, my husband cheats on me, we don't have enough money, my kids have special needs, whatever the misery is, put it on your left hand. Lay it all in there. All right? It's there. And if you focus on whatever you can think about that might be hopeful or good on your right hand. Put a couple things in there. Maybe I'm thankful that I'm here to take care of my kids. Maybe I'm thankful that I'm healthy enough to take care of my kids. Maybe I'm thankful that I'm not losing my mind right now in this house that I live in. Maybe I'm thankful that I'm strong enough to work if I have to. Maybe I'm thankful that I did go to college and get a degree. Maybe I'm thankful that I'm resourceful and I'm creative, right? There might be lots of things in your right hand that you're thankful for, even in this miserable place in the left hand. Now, which one are you going to focus on, right? You have a choice. You do have a choice. And Paul tells us in Philippians 4:6-9, he says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which passes all understanding, will guard your heart and your mind. And finally, brethren, here's the point in verse 9. Finally, whatsoever things are true and good and right and noble and lovely, choose to think about these things. It doesn't erase these things. It doesn't erase them, but it shifts something internally so that you can cope with these things in a healthier way, right? It doesn't mean that you just endure them. If the people were in the concentration camp and they had an opportunity to get out, they would have made that choice. They would have made that choice. Okay? So you can even imagine being somewhere else in a concentration camp, and I'm sure they did that. You can develop relationships with your fellow prisoners and help each other, support each other, get through this together. That's another choice you have versus turning into a bitter, angry person who no one wants to be around because this happened to me. This isn't fair. Well, it's not fair, and you don't want to be here for sure. Nobody else wants to be there either. And if you're with people who are there who don't want to be there either, how can we support one another? How can we share our bread? How can we share our warmth? How can we share our suffering? Right? These are choices that we make. So let's get back to our situation now, your situation. You're in, most of you who are listening to me are probably in a destructive marriage. And if you want to know how long you should keep trying to stick it out, I really want you to come to our workshop next week. It's on the 13th. I'm going to put a little banner up here that you can see how to sign up for that. And you need to sign up because it's not here. It's on a separate location where you're going to be totally free to ask your questions that you want to ask that might be more detailed than you would want to put on a Facebook Live publicly, okay? We do have a place for you to put your questions if you want to ask a question anonymously. Jessica, if you could put that in the chat for them to see where to go if they want to ask that kind of question and not put it on Facebook. So we have that early. All right, but let's talk about the choices. So I wrote a little chart here. You, me, and my charts, right? So here are your choices. You're in a destructive marriage. You're not happy about it. He's betrayed you. He's cheating. He's lying. He's watching porn. And these are big deal breakers, not just he won't pick up his dirty clothes off the floor and it aggravates me. That's a different category, okay? Yes, we all have those categories in our home. Those aren't deal breakers. Those are just aggravators, right? But there's some betrayers. What are the betrayers in your relationship that break trust? He hits me. He treats me like garbage. He cheats on me. He lies to me. I don't trust him. I don't feel safe with him. Why? Right? Those are the reasons the relationship is destructive. Just because he aggravates me doesn't mean it's destructive. It's certainly aggravating and disappointing, but it's destructive if he's broken safety and trust. And I'm not just talking about physical safety, financial safety, sexual safety, psychological safety, spiritual safety. He oppresses you. He bullies you spiritually. So, what are your choices? What are your choices? Let's first start with some unhealthy choices. What are some healthy, unhealthy choices that you might make if you're in that kind of situation? So, Kathy, if you need to ask a private question, then just do it through the feed in there that Jessica put in there. It's leslievernick.com/question/. And if you go there, you can ask a question that way privately. Eating chocolate. Yes. So I like chocolate too, but an unhealthy choice, a way of coping might be self-soothing in unhealthy ways. Okay. So self-soothing, which is a good choice actually to comfort yourself in some way, but the way that you do that would be unhealthy with overeating, drugs, alcohol, other kinds of toxic substances, or having an affair, It makes me feel better to cheat on him because he cheated on me. All right. So unhealthy choices might be to self-soothe in unhealthy ways. We all do it, but recognize what you're doing because you'll have a price to pay. You will have a price to pay when you make this choice. So are you willing to pay that price for that moment of comfort or pleasure? Are you willing to pay the price of 10 pounds overweight, 50 pounds overweight, a substance addiction now, the cost of the substance, and a guilty conscience, right? The guilty conscience. All right. So what's another unhealthy way that we try, another unhealthy choice? An unhealthy choice is to do nothing. Live in denial. It'll get better. It's okay. It's not that bad. All right. That's an unhealthy choice. All right. So if I find a lump on my breast and I start drinking alcohol because I'm anxious about it, and I start eating chocolate, but I don't go to the doctor and I pretend it's really not there, those are choices I am making about something that could be bad in my life, but I'm not willing to face it. I'm not willing to deal with it. I'm making that choice. Nobody's making me make that choice. I'm making that choice. And I'm going to pay the price of that. Pay attention. Remember, we talked about the maturity. One of the marks of maturity is self-awareness. You got to be aware of what you're doing and reflect on what you're doing. What's another unhealthy choice? Okay, Carol Sue, absolutely. Obsessing about him. All right. Obsessing about him. Why? And how we obsess is the why question. Why is he doing this? Why won't he change? Why won't he love me? Why? You're never going to, sin is insanity. So when I was a counselor and I was starting my practice, I would be like, why would a dad molest his child? Is there ever any why to that? There is no good reason. There's lots of, oh, he was molested as a child or he was sexually abused. So I was sexually abused. I don't molest people. So it's not a reason why someone does something. Yes, it may make us more damaged and more vulnerable to those kind of things, but we have choices. Everyone has choices. So don't get caught in the why is he doing that? There is no rational answer. It's not because of you. So we obsess about him. The other thing we obsess about him is we obsess about changing him. If only he would change, I wouldn't have this problem, right? If only he would be a good guy, I wouldn't feel unsafe. If only he would be a decent person, we could make this work, right? And so you focus on trying to get him to change in order for you to be okay. I already did a whole workshop on that a couple of months ago. It doesn't work. All right. I'll be doing another workshop on that in September if you want to know the answer to that. Doesn't work. All right. Just drives yourself crazy. All right. Blaming myself. Yeah. If it's my fault he acts this way, then I can change him. If only I change. Okay. Self. Another unhealthy choice is fighting back in unhealthy ways. Okay. Ugly ways. What are other unhealthy choices? Yeah, Rhonda says we can make unhealthy choices that become our solutions to our problems, like overeating. We feel better, but eventually cause another problem to solve. It creates compounding problems. All right, and another unhealthy choice is taking responsibility, blaming yourself for his behavior. It's my fault he cheats because I'm uncomfortable in the bedroom because of my own trauma. No, let's say you have a real issue, okay? Let's say you really do have an issue with being intimate, and so he blames you for why he does what he does. He has choices too. And so he's using an unhealthy choice to his own unhappiness to cope with that. Instead of talking to you, getting help, going to help together, you're not making good choices together. He's blaming you for his bad choice. And there's these smidgens of truth. If my kids are disobedient and I smack them across the mouth, there's a smidgen of truth. If they weren't disobedient, I wouldn't have acted that way in the moment, but it's not their fault that I acted that way in the moment, right? Those are my choices to make. So be careful here because these are all kinds of unhealthy choices. Unhealthy choice, taking responsibility for his behavior. What about this unhealthy choice? Hopium. Do you know what hopium is? Hopium is saying, I know God can change him. I know God can change him. I know God could change him. I know what kind of good guy he is. I see the man he could become. I know God can change him. I'm just going to keep praying for that. Right? If you're unsafe and you can't trust this man, that is not a good choice. All right? Because first of all, God never changes anybody who doesn't want to be changed. So if you don't see any evidence that your husband wants to change, then this is called hopium. Hopium, like opium, hopium. It keeps you in la la land and not facing reality. That's an unhealthy choice. Can you think of any other unhealthy choices? Okay, I think we've got them. All right, so how many of you are raising your hand or thinking inside, I've been making some unhealthy choices, okay? Just like my painting. Now, that wasn't an unhealthy choice. It was an ignorant choice. I'm not that good of a drawer or painter yet. So I didn't recognize my mistake until I could see it. And now that I see it, I'm not going to keep painting the picture the same way, right? I've got to fix it. So no shame in owning your unhealthy coping mechanisms. Just own them. That's what we talked about, taking responsibility instead of blaming. Well, I wouldn't have this unhealthy coping mechanism if he would just love me, right? And then that's just a vicious cycle of unhealthiness. Take responsibility for you and your choices. I'm not handling this traffic jam very well. I'm not handling this diagnosis of cancer very well. Yes, it's hard. It is hard to handle being in a destructive marriage in a way that you're proud of, but you can do it with help. You can't usually do it all by yourself, but you can do it with support, with like-minded people who want to do it too, right? SLR says, I have too much hopium. I also blame myself for so long. Denial and shame are so powerful. Learning how to counteract those. Yeah. Another unhealthy coping mechanism or decision to make, which is really powerful, and Rhonda mentioned it, is isolation. So I'm just going to put it over here. We can't really see it. Isolation. And what that is a shame technique. Isolation. It's hard to spell upside down when you're writing on. So this sometimes is we feel so ashamed of what's going on at home and so ashamed of how we're coping because either we're depressed or we're letting ourselves go or we're eating too much or we're just not even able to talk about anything because we're so wrapped up in what's going on with us and we're just traumatized in some way that we just isolate. And that really serves the abuse cycle very well, because the more that you isolate, and you do that by choice, sometimes you're isolated because you're afraid, because he tells you you can't go out and he's checking the odometer. I'm not saying that's also toxic, but that's not your choice. You're afraid and that's what you're doing to keep safe. But you isolate. You don't tell anyone. You lie and pretend everything is fine when it's not. So here's another one. Lying and pretending is a coping mechanism, and it's a choice. You think that if I lie and pretend to my kids that we have a happy marriage, they'll do better than if they know the truth. And let me just tell you, I'm not saying you should tell your kids the whole truth and nothing but the truth, but I do think that you need to stop lying and pretending, because what happens when you lie and pretend and you're good at it, let's say you're really good at it. Like, I can make Christmas super even though my husband's a jerk. I can make our finances magically pay all the bills even though he's gambling all our money away. I can be Superwoman. And maybe you can for a season. And then there's going to come a time when you can't. But you can't. You break down because you're not Superwoman. You break down. And then you come to your senses and you say, that was stupid. I can't do that anymore. Just like if you keep drinking and taking drugs, you're going to come to a place, hopefully that's stupid, just like this painting. Oops, the eye is wrong. I've got to change and fix this. You're going to come to a place where, oh, this is stupid. I've got to change. And the typical response from adult children or churches when you've lied and pretended your whole life is they don't believe you. When you finally come clean with what's really going on, they're going to be like, your whole life you said you had a great marriage. Everything on Instagram, all our Christmases are wonderful. Mom, you always, what's wrong now? It's you. It's you who's being so fussy. It's you who's lying and telling stories about it. They will not believe you. And if they do believe, if you have some evidence that they believe a little bit, they'll say, well, why don't you just keep doing what you've always done to keep our family together? It's an absolutely bad decision long term, right? It might work for Christmas, but it's an absolutely wrong decision long term to lie and pretend everything is fine when it's not. It's a decision, but it's not a good one. Yeah, as LR says, isolation, especially being in a psychologically abusive relationship for so long, you lose your identity, become a recluse, and wear a mask when you're outside. Yeah, yeah, and you lose yourself because part of our self is developed. So when we talked about self maturing, right, and we become aware of ourself, both biologically when we learn to hold our urine and all those kind of things, we become aware of our bodies and we become aware that we're not our mother's body, we're our own body. And then we become aware of our own thoughts and we become aware of our own feelings and we start becoming aware of ourselves. We don't become totally aware of ourselves all by ourselves. Imagine living in a world with no mirrors and no cameras, right? So we become aware of ourselves also through reflection of mirrors. We look in the mirror, we see what we look like, we look in a camera, and even we see a picture of ourselves. Like I'll look at a picture of myself and I'm thinking, wow, when I look in the mirror, I feel really fat. I was always a fat little kid, all right? So not fat little kid, fat teenager, fat adult before I lost the weight. But I look at that, I thought that. I'd say, I was really fat. And when I look at pictures, I wasn't fat. It was all in my head, right? And so people would tell me, you're not fat. So it was my own issue. It was my own issue in here. And so what I'm saying is we need truth tellers like mirrors, like cameras, like people in our life to give us feedback about ourselves. Like, oh, you're really a good writer. I never thought I was a good writer. I never even thought about being a writer. Someone says, oh, I really love what you wrote about this. Really? They give you feedback about yourself. Sometimes it's truthful. Sometimes it's not truthful because sometimes people will say, oh, you're a terrible writer. I got that feedback too. And so understand, we have to discern who we're going to listen to. But if you isolate, the only person you listen to is someone who's unhealthy, wicked, foolish, and destructive. Why would that be the only voice in your head that you listen to? That will mess you up. That's why you need support of others. That's why we do these lives, so that you can see, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. Oh my gosh, I'm not alone. Oh my gosh, I'm not wrong for thinking this way. Okay. What if you didn't know for 30 years because they made you out to be crazy? Then you find out about a bunch of lies all at once. I feel like I've been shot. Try to stand up and been shot again. Yeah, Carol, it does feel that way. And that's why you first need support and safety. Those are your first two choices that you must make if you want to get healthy and strong. And so what are some healthy choices? Let's move over here. All right. So I will say, stop isolating. All right. That's a good first choice. And you're doing that even now by coming on Facebook. Okay. It's a little dangerous because other people might see you here and say, why are you watching Leslie Vernick? She's a woman who tells people to get divorced. I'm not a woman who tells people that's what they're going to tell you if they don't want you here. Or, well, I thought your marriage was great. So they may ask you questions that you don't want to ask or answer. So understand when you're here, it's a little bit of a risk, but you've made a choice. I'm going to stop isolating. I'm going to get some information that might be helpful to me. I'm going to ask questions. Those are all really good choices. And I'm going to find people I can trust who might have the same values, like biblical worldview, Christian values that I have, that use the Bible completely different than my husband uses it. And I might get some fresh air. You know, when you've lived in a toxic, stinky environment for a long time, just like if you've been in a stinky room or a stinky car that's got a lot of BO and, cigarette smell or whatever, whatever it is. I remember being in Russia and I was on a pretty stinky airplane because nobody uses deodorant and it was hot and it wasn't air conditioned. It was a pretty stinky airplane. I just couldn't wait to get out of that airplane and breathe some fresh air. Breathe some fresh air, right? This will help you breathe some fresh air. Okay. So what else can you do? Join a health club. If you have Advantage Plan at Silver Sneakers, you can get in free. Working out or exercise is a good choice for you. Why? Well, it not only burns calories and helps you look better, it actually helps you feel better. And studies have shown that. So I personally struggle with depression. I have my whole life. And I only once had a long-term depression, but I know that I'm vulnerable to that. What do? I walk I would say every day if I can. Now, I moved also to a sunshine climate from Pennsylvania, which is cloudy 90% of the time, to Arizona, which is sunny 90% of the time, because it impacts me. I made choices to help myself, right? And so this is really important that you make good choices that help you stay healthy, and exercise is one of them. It doesn't have to be, you work out with weights at the gym. It can be just a good old fashioned rigorous walk for 20 minutes a day, and that can help you, right? Reflect on the goodness of God, listen to good music, put good truth into your head. These are choices you make every single day with what you do with your time. What else can you do that is healthy? Make a safety plan. All right. So if you are in a relationship where there is safety issues, physical, emotional, mental, if you feel like you're losing your mind because of the gaslighting, what are you going to do about that? Who are you going to talk with? So one safety plan, if you get gaslit a lot, is I would write down the conversations, write down what you said, what you didn't say, right in the moment, because later on, and write down what he said too, because later on he's going to say, I never said that. And you're going to feel crazy because you're going to think, I know he said that. Well, now you can go back and look. He did say that. He's just lying, but he does that to make me feel crazy inside. So start documenting some things, not to hold him accountable. He's not going to be held accountable, to help you from feeling that's inside. That's a safety plan. If you fear for your financial safety, what is it that you need to do? Perhaps you need to separate the accounts. If you fear for, understand, if your husband is lying to you financially, we just wrote a blog about this, so it's on my mind fresh. If he's gambling money away, or if he's lying to the IRS, as long as you're married, you are 50% responsible for everything he does financially, right? So if he racks up tons of credit card debt, you're 50% responsible. If you end up getting divorced, you're responsible. If he cheats on his taxes, you're responsible. They do have something called the innocent spouse clause for the IRS. If you report it right away, as soon as you find out, if you wait and you keep silent, like the traditional advice that you get, oh, don't expose the hidden deeds of darkness. That's disloyal. It is not disloyal. It is safety for you. And perhaps a wake-up call for him that you can't keep doing things that are illegal and wrong and think that I'm going to cover for you, right? So what is your safety plan? Spiritually, maybe you're here because you're being told by maybe a very fundamentalist church that your role as a woman is strictly functional. You are to cook, you're to clean, you're to have babies, you're to support your husband, you're to revolve your whole life around making him happy. But that's not true. God didn't create women to solely be functional servers of man. That's not what the definition of a helpmate. The definition of a helpmate is from Proverbs 31. She makes his life better, she enriches his life, and she doesn't enable his dysfunction, which is what typical old-fashioned Christian counseling is. Stay silent, stay supportive, build him up, and don't confront him. That's disloyal. Don't tell anyone what he's doing. That's terrible. That's not terrible. That's not what the Bible says. So let's be really clear, get some new information to help you to know what to do biblically. So developing a safety plan is a good choice. Getting safe is a good choice. If you need to file a protection order to get him out of the house if you've been physically abusive, these are things that you need to do that are healthy choices. What other healthy choices? Get support. Did I put that? Get support from people who are wiser and smarter than you. All right. I hang out with people. I like to hang out with people who are wiser and smarter than me in lots of areas, whether it's money management, whether it's pickleball. I don't play good pickleball with people who don't play pickleball well, right? I can't learn how to play better pickleball with people who can't return the ball. So I always try to hang out with people who are smarter and better than I am at everything, spiritually, emotionally, pickleball, finances, art. Who's going to fix this eye? I'm going to have to find you. If you're an artist and you know how close I need to move it over, let me know. Because I'm going to have to call a friend and say, here's the picture, and I'm going to have to take my measurements and really figure it out. Because I'm not quite sure. Hang out with people who are smarter than you, who know what you're trying to do and have been there, can get you there, can help you, right? The Bible tells us we become like the company we keep. That's why isolation is so toxic. All right, set some boundaries. Somebody just mentioned that. Great. If you haven't read Lisa TerKeurst's book, Good Boundaries, Goodbye, it's excellent. Excellent. Get it today. Start reading it. She had to do it. She's been in a destructive marriage. She's out of it now, but she's in it. She's going to, Lisa and I have been working together. She's going to, she's promoting our Conquer membership, and she's going to be on our live stream. So if you've never had a chance to talk with Lisa, she will be at our live stream. I can't remember the date. I think it's April 18th, maybe. It's the week after the webinar, after the workshop that we're doing. So she will be there with us and helping you to understand what Conquer can do. It really helps you to stop isolating. It really helps you to get with wise people who can help you take these steps forward. All right. If everyone hangs out with people smarter than them, then no one will be hanging out. Well, I don't know that that's true. You always can find people who are smarter than you in something, right? And not in everything, because sometimes people hang out with me because I'm smarter than you. All right. I'm smarter than you. That's why you're hanging out with me right now in certain things of these areas, right? And all of you are pretty smart, and you're hanging out with each other because you're learning from each other. So you all might be smart in one thing and not so smart in another thing. Like somebody might be really good at getting support, and another person might be really good at exercise. Another person might be really good at setting boundaries, right? All right. What is another healthy choice that you can make? What's another healthy choice that you can make? You might decide to leave, all right? A destructive marriage. That might be a healthy choice, right? And we'll talk about that and how do you know enough is enough at the workshop. So if you decide to leave, there's two ways that I recommend leaving. One is you leave fast because you're not safe, all right? So if you're not safe, you just leave. You can't think a whole lot about how to do it really well because you're scared and you're in danger. And so if you're being stalked, you don't think about, well, what's the healthy way? You just start running or screaming or blowing your whistle or whatever you need to do to get safe, right? And so do what you need to do to get safe. The Bible values safety. The Bible tells us the prudent, the wise person sees danger and she takes refuge. She takes action steps to get safe. And the person who ignores the danger ends up paying a serious price. Don't let that be you. All right. So it might be you need to leave a toxic marriage because it's not safe for you. And it might not just be not safe physically. It might not be safe emotionally. Maybe you're doing all kinds of toxic things to yourself because you can't take it. And then maybe the best thing you could do is say, I can't be in this environment. So if you live in a home with toxic mold, black mold, and your husband's saying to you, it's not that bad. I don't feel anything. You're just oversensitive. What's wrong with you? And you're getting congested and you can't breathe and you can't sleep. And because you can't sleep, you're getting depressed and you're making bad decisions and you're getting all congested and you can't work. It might be that you have to leave that environment. Even if he can cope with it, you can't. And that's okay for you to say, I'm responsible to steward my safety and I'm not safe in this environment. It's killing me. And maybe your body is wired differently than mine, but my body is saying danger, danger, danger. And I've got to get safe. I've got to get out of this environment. And you might need to do that for yourself. And that might be a healthy choice. And another healthy choice. Not safe spiritually. Okay, Lisa will be with us April 21st at 12 p.m. Eastern time. Thank you so much. And it won't be on, I don't think it'll be on Facebook. I'm not sure. It'll be on StreamYard, but it'll be somewhere. It might be on Facebook. I'm not even sure where it's going to be. I don't think of that far ahead technically. All right. What other healthy choices can you make? Learn to identify when you or he are flooding and ask for a break. Unplug from the situation. Don't ruminate. Self-soothe in healthy ways. Okay. So those would be good, kind of the details of creating good boundaries for yourself. Both your own self, like, hey, so if I have a boundary, I have certain boundaries. Like I don't watch scary movies at night. My husband can watch them and he can sleep fine. I don't sleep well when I'm watching a lot of bang up, trauma, scary, kidnapping, violent crime shows. So I have a boundary, I can watch them in the afternoon. I can watch them in the early evening so I can go do something later, but I'm not watching them after 8 o'clock at night. That's my boundary for my own welfare, for my own sleep. I don't say he can't watch them. I say I don't do that. So what if you were in a conversation with someone and they were, bullying you or scaring you or whatever, and you said, I can't have this conversation anymore. I need a break. And then they start mocking, oh, you're so weak. You're such a baby. You need a break. It's like someone mocking you because you have to go to the bathroom. If you said to someone, I can't talk anymore, I got to go to the bathroom. I said that to my staff yesterday. We were doing a Zoom call. I said, I got to go to the bathroom. I got to take a break here. And they made fun of me. What would that say about them? Don't somebody bully you or intimidate you by mocking you. Mockers are mockers. They do it. They're wrong. They shouldn't be doing it. Don't let them intimidate and bully you by their mocking, right? So set some boundaries for yourself. Set some boundaries for yourself. And the other healthy choice when you're in a destructive relationship is understand this. Choose life. Isn't that something God said in Deuteronomy to the Israelites? What does that look like? What does that look like, sound like, and feel like when you're in a toxic marriage? Well, it sounds like doing things that will bring you life. So if walking every day brings you life, if reading your Bible brings you life, if listening to praise and worship music brings you life, then those are healthy coping strategies. But it also might mean if leaving the relationship because it's toxic and demeaning and disrespectful and crazy making and abusive, not safe, and you don't trust him, that might be a good choice because I'm choosing life and you don't want to fix us. So I'm going to choose to stay healthy for me. And this is not selfish, ladies. This is not selfish. Sometimes people will say, well, you're called to die to yourself. Yes, we are. You're called to suffer for Jesus. Yes, we are. But let's look at the whole picture of that advice. When you die to yourself, we've used this before in our Facebook Live illustrations. If you think about what dies to itself. So Jesus used the illustration of a seed. When a seed, if you have it, and I don't have a seed with me, but it's planting season almost, we're going to start putting stuff in the ground. And when you put a seed in the ground, it no longer is a seed. It dies to itself, right? It breaks open. And then what? What happens? Yeah, then it develops more. It grows into something more. And so there are seasons of dying to ourselves as we were because we're growing into something different. So it might be that you're dying to yourself as a insecure, needy, dependent woman, and you're growing into a healthy, strong, capable, wise woman. That's God's will for you. That is God's will for you. Or you're dying to yourself as a man-centered woman, and you're coming alive to becoming a God-centered woman. Those are God's will for you. So dying to yourself is a process for sure, but it's not just becoming a functional object to meet everybody else's needs and not have a person of your own. That's not what dying to self means at all, biblically. The other phrase, suffering for Jesus, yes, we should suffer for Jesus. And so I hope that if we have to stand up for things that are right in our culture, especially these days, I never grew up thinking suffering for Jesus was any more than just having a friend make fun of you. Now you might go to jail. You might lose your job if you stand up for what's right? If you stand up for truth, if you stand against wickedness and evil and oppression and other kinds of things. We can see a time where that might really cost you. And that Jesus warns us about that it might cost you. But standing up or suffering to allow a bully to continue to bully, or suffering to allow a sinner to enable their sinning to continue and flourish without consequence isn't smart. It's not biblical, and Jesus never did it. So don't think that you have to do that in order to be in God's good graces. That's not what God's saying. So I'm done with the teaching, but I do want to answer your questions. So we want to, Brooke says, could you talk about having forgiveness and grace in dysfunctional dynamic? Yeah, so I think it's really important for you. So I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to give you some homework here. What kind of person do you want to be through all of this? Do you want to be an angry, bitter, resentful, broken, damaged, wounded person? Because some of you are in the war zone right now. Is that how you want to end up through all this, sort of like the concentration camp survivors. There's going to be some damage, right? But you also have to ask who I want to be through this. And so I think that's your choice. Like, how are you going to be and who are you going to be through this? And are you going to be bitter and resentful and angry and helpless? Or are you going to grow resiliency and strength and dignity and wisdom and good choices through this? Right? And so if you decide that, then you don't have to come out even from a concentration camp. Because I've read hundreds of stories of people who came out of a horrible situation. There's a wonderful story. I can't think of the name of it. She's a psychologist. I think her name is Edna. Maybe, Jessica, you can find it. She was a psychologist who wrote a number of books, and she works for the Army. She's like 93 years old now. And she said, I did have trauma. I did have trauma that I had to work through. And the choice is, I'm going to work through it. I'm going to work through it. I'm going to deal with it. And I'm not going to let it get the best of me. Right? I'm going to grow through it. I'm going to heal. Those are choices that you make. But you might not be able to heal in the environment you're in if you're still being oppressed, right? And you have a choice. And you can leave if you need to. And that might be for a season, and to see whether your husband is really willing to create an environment of safety and trust in a marriage. Those are the basics. You do not have to have romantic love to stay in a long-term marriage. In fact, I would say that most people I know, their love changes through the years and it deepens, but it doesn't have that same feeling that it had when you first got married. And sometimes you don't have that feeling at all because marriage is hard. But if you don't have trust and safety, you can't feel safe living with someone long-term. And so what does it take to rebuild that? And if your husband's not willing to rebuild that or even talk about it, how can you feel safe? And how can your children feel safe? Those are questions that we will talk about in our workshop. So if you haven't signed up yet, or you know someone who might be really helped by listening to the workshop, please give them the link. It's leslievernick.com/join workshop. You can't heal the environment. Vicki, you can go to the question tracker that we've given you to ask a question anonymously. I'll say it out loud again if I can find it here. Hold on, let me get it on my computer. My computer went to sleep. Here we go. It's leslievernick.com/question/. All right, so I'm going to answer some questions right now. My husband buys stuff that does not make sense, like a ton of pens, a ton of books, a ton of everything. Stuff from the house disappears then sometimes. Things come back used. He's gone for hours. I have no idea where he is. Underwear disappears. He says because I don't work, because I don't work, it's his money. He just gives me money for groceries. He still wants to go to marriage class because I'm the problem. I am sleeping and basically living in one room. I have an activity I enjoy. If I have an activity I enjoy, or even he listens, I'm on the phone laughing. He's very mad afterwards. He withdraws any insight. I'm preparing to leave. I've been applying for jobs, no success yet. Yeah, I mean, so obviously your husband has some issues, control issues, maybe some hoarding issues. I don't know, some sneaky issues for sure. Like, where's the stuff going? And weird. It's weird. And he's got a very skewed idea of marriage. So marriage, both legally as well as morally, as well as spiritually, is always defined as a partnership. It's always defined as a partnership. It's not a slave, master, parent, child dictatorship. So your husband's view of marriage is, I make the money, so I get to control everything, even though you may do a lot of other work to support the marriage in the home. So for a season, sometimes women stay home, and sometimes for a long time, women stay home. I wish I had a wife. I would love to have a wife who wants to be my wife, because I'm working full time, and I would love to have a wife at home who did everything for me and took care of everything at home. So I think a wife is a very valuable job, but it's not paid, right? But if someone doesn't value that and the contribution that you make to support the person who is out making the money, especially if you don't value that and you see it as, yeah, I'm just a wife and I don't have equal say, it's not a partnership. So a partnership makes a decision. So if I have a partnership with someone, I'm going to do this, you're going to do that. And sometimes this gets more money into the pot of the family welfare, and this gets more peace and sanity into the pot of the family welfare because I don't have to be working 24/7, both making money and making dinner and doing laundry and cleaning the house and all of the other stuff. And so there's a synergy that goes together in creating a family and creating a life. And when your husband creates his version of reality, which is very distorted, you get one room, I get the house. You can serve me and do what I say because I'll provide your food and beverage, and I get all the money and decide how to spend all the money. That's not a partnership. It feels like you're either a slave or an employee or an object to use, a functional person to do what he needs you to do for him, and he will give you room and board for that. And I don't think that's working for you for sure. So I'm so glad that you've decided that you're going to exit out of that situation for your own safety and whatever else weird stuff you might be doing with all that other stuff. And to be able to say, I am not willing to do marriage this way. Instead of trying to convince him to do marriage a different way. This is really important, ladies. If you can speak about what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do, instead of what he should be doing and what he should be not doing, you have far more power because you can't control him. You can only control you. So if you say, hey, I'm not willing to do marriage this way. To me, this is unhealthy and oppressive, and I'm not willing to do marriage this way. And whether you say all that out loud or you just know that in your head, that puts him on notice that I'm not willing to do it. And for many men, they'll just find another person who is, at least temporarily, because they're in love and they think that that's what happens. But it might be that he wakes up and says, why? And then you tell him, and then he might make some adjustments. We'll talk about that in the workshop. So let's say you do that. And he says, wait a minute, I didn't know you were so upset. I'm willing to change. Let's talk about it. All right, well, let's see what that change looks like. And in the workshop, I'll tell you, if he's changing, what are you looking for? And what will be the road marks that you are the roadmap, the mile markers that you'll know, hey, we're getting closer to rebuilding trust and safety, or this is just words and whitewash. And how will you know the difference? And I will teach you that in this workshop. So please sign up for it so that you can watch it. Okay. How to forgive myself for being so dumb and getting married with an unhealthy man. How to gain confidence. It's hard to trust my gut or my skills when I made such a mistake and allowed abuse, though I didn't know it at the time. So here's the deal. I don't think you have to forgive yourself for being dumb, because all of us go through seasons of dumb. Like I'm dumb in my art right now, right? I made a big mistake and I can fix it, but it's going to cost me in terms of waiting it out and having to figure it out. But the difference between you and me, now this isn't a marriage mistake, but this is a mistake. The difference between you and me is I'm not going to forgive myself for making a mistake. I'm just going to accept myself, that I'm a learning person and I'm not going to know everything about art that I need to know. Right. And that's true for all of life. I'm not going to know everything I need to know about business, or I'm not going to know everything I need to know about relationships. And when I make a mistake, I learn. So if you could accept yourself as a learner, and that you're learning the hard way, and you're learning through mistakes versus learning through information. There's two ways of learning. When you tell your kid, don't put their hand on the hot stove because it'll burn you, and they don't learn that way, they learn the other way through making the mistake, right? And then they take their hand off and they learn, right? That's not a bad way to learn. This is why, going back to the idea of grace and forgiveness, I'm sorry, I didn't answer that question. Going back to that story of grace and forgiveness and how does that play out in a destructive marriage, sometimes we think that grace and mercy and forgiveness means, we'll erase consequences. That means we don't hold them accountable. We don't send them to jail. We don't separate. We don't have boundaries. We don't go to, have whatever we need to do to have consequences. That doesn't teach them then. It teaches them that they can get away with murder with no consequences. That's not reality. So if my child doesn't pay attention to my words, don't put your hand on the hot stove because it'll burn you, and they put their hand on the hot stove and they get burned, most children don't keep repeating that unless there's something really wrong with their brain, right? And so when you forgive someone, it doesn't mean you erase the consequences. Right? The consequences are still there. When God forgave David for sinning against Bathsheba, the child still died. And the consequences to his family and to his kingdom were still there. He was forgiven, but he still paid an awful price for his decisions. right? And so understand that mercy and grace doesn't erase consequences. Now, going back to this question, how do you forgive yourself? How about we just accept that you don't know everything and that that's okay? It's not okay to continue to not know everything that you need to know. So it's not okay that I keep painting this picture that's got its eye off to the side, or she's going to look really weird at the end, right? I don't want that end result. So now that I know that I made a mistake, I'm going to stop painting the other parts of her face and I'm going to figure out that eye, right? And hopefully next time we do a Facebook Live, she'll be better. So here's where you are, not beating yourself up about what you didn't know, but taking action constructively about what you know now, right? So I'm not going to beat myself up that I didn't know how to do that eye. I thought I did, but I didn't. Now that I know, I'm going to fix it. I'm not going to spend my time beating myself up that I didn't know. All right. And so I would really encourage you to accept that you are a limited, fallible human being that doesn't know everything. And it's okay to learn on the go. And I'm learning on the go. I didn't have to learn everything I need to know about art before I started. I'm learning as I go. And you can learn as you go too. It's okay. All right. Here's another question. I am hypervigilant. Me too. All the time. When he is around, my body is tense. Even if I go to the other room or have my things to do, he gets mad because now I don't react. And I've been working on my life besides him. And he gets jealous. He says that I ignore him and he starts to be very passive aggressive. How do I regain the peace, the self-love, the help, obviously the confidence in me? Yeah, you're doing a really good job. And I'm really glad that you've stopped reacting. But what you're doing is reacting inside now. You're stopped reacting on the outside in a destructive, unhealthy way, but you're still reacting. Your body's reacting. Okay, so you're still not feeling safe. You're still not feeling safe. And sometimes I'm hypervigilant too. I'm not hypervigilant in my home. I feel safe there, but I pretty much am hypervigilant everywhere else because I have been in danger at times. And so you sort of have that trauma memory in your body. And so I just call it, I'm alert. I'm alert to be very aware of my surroundings. And so maybe instead of saying you're hypervigilant, saying you're alert, but I think it might be helpful to have a conversation with your husband and say, I don't want to feel tense in my own home. And I feel tense around you. And don't say anything more about why or what, but I don't want to feel tense and uptight in my own home. And I feel that, especially around you. Now see what his response is. If his response is, it's always about you, isn't it? You're just so sensitive, nothing's right. So he gets defensive and critical and demeaning. Understand that you are not to continue that conversation. So when we teach you in our membership group in Conquer how to have certain conversations with people, we tell you to put your toe in the water. You don't start sharing your heart. You say one thing and see how they handle that. Because if you start sharing your heart, now they've got ammo to throw back at you. He doesn't know why you're tense. He just knows you're tense, right? He doesn't know anything about that yet. And you might use even a softer word than tense. I'm feeling a little stressed, right? At home lately. Why? Most people would say, why? What's wrong? Not you again. You're always complaining about something, right? So when you say that, it's like he doesn't even care to know why. He just wants you to stop bothering him with it. So Jesus tells us very clearly, don't keep casting your pearls before swine. So don't do that because you just get hurt. But by some chance, if he says yes, or if he says, why? Why are you tense around me? Because it seems like you have an agenda for me that doesn't include anything that I want. Like I have to be where you want me. You have to do what you want me to do. If I do my own thing, you're jealous. I don't want to live like that. It feels like I'm, kind of here just to serve you and I don't have any freedom of my own. And I don't like that, right? You're not going to talk about it's not right for you to do that because he's going to argue with you. You're going to say more of, I don't like that. That doesn't feel right to me. So you're going to just talk about you because you're going to see whether you matter. And if you don't matter because you're just functional, you do the wash, you clean the house, you get the groceries, you take care of the kids, you have sex. That's your function. Don't talk to me about anything else. And if you want to do anything outside your function, That's wrong. Don't do that because it takes away from all those functions that you do for me. Well, then that tells you something. It tells you you are simply an object. And sadly, I think traditional teaching on marriage has taught Christian women to see themselves as an object. Like you are what's your role? What's your role? Here's my role. I got these 5 things. What else? Who are you, girl? Who are you? What kind of person are you? Who do you want to be? What breathes life into you? And pay attention to that. In the healthy side, what breathes life to you? And so you're saying, hey, maybe going out with some of my friends or maybe doing my art. I'm grateful that my husband lets me stay in here and do my art for 3 hours at night. He might be watching TV. I hate watching TV, right? Is it okay for you to do your own thing? Especially shoot up programs at night. I don't watch them. I'll stand here and do my art. It's okay for me to be me and him to be him in the same house. Is that okay for you too? No, right? And so that's something that you can speak about in a very non-threatening way. I don't like it. And see if it matters. Like if you were having dinner or your husband, you said, buy some ice cream. And he buys chocolate ice cream and you say, oh, I don't like chocolate ice cream. Most husbands would say, oh, what kind of ice cream do you want next time? But husbands who don't, well, why don't you like? I can't understand why anybody wouldn't like chocolate. And that's the end of that. There's no thought about you liking something else because you aren't really you. You're just there to serve them. You buy the chocolate ice cream next time, right? All right. So I would just encourage you to continue to do your own work to get healthy and whatever that means. And I just want to say this, and I don't say this lightly, I say this seriously. Sometimes it's not possible to get healthy in the environment you're in, right? If you're not safe. So we have 2 parts of our brain, and this is simplifying things quite a bit. We have the safety part that God has hardwired us, right? We need safety. We need safety. And if we don't feel safe, that's all we're going to work on. We're not going to work on growth. We're not going to work on love. We're not going to work on any of those kind of things. If we're feeling unsafe, we're looking for safety. And our children are looking for safety. And so if you're in that kind of environment, the growth part is impossible almost. Maybe tiny little steps, but it's very hard to grow, flourish when you're not. It's not possible to flourish when you're not safe, right? It's not possible. So your brain is always wired, even biologically. If you're if you're biologically not safe, you're going to be running. You're going to be using all your energy to run away or get away or freeze or whatever you're going to do. You're not thinking, I thought about that Bible verse this morning. I wonder what it meant. You're not thinking about that. You just can't. All the circuits are safety, safety, safety. Your whole body is wired toward that. God made you that way. And so if you're not safe, it's not possible to do some of the next things that you want to do. So it might be helpful for you to decide, am I safe to grow here? Am I safe to be me here? And if I'm not, if you say that statement, hey, I feel kind of tense because I'm not really, and I wouldn't use the word safe because that would set off alarm bells for him, but I would just say, I'm not really, it feels to me that I'm not allowed to be me here, that I have to be what you want me to be. And I'm not that, I'm me. And see how he handles that and what happens next. And if he's not okay with you being you and you wanting to be you and you wanting to grow into you, then that's a very toxic environment. So if I plant a seed and it's a watermelon seed and I'm trying to make it into a flower and the plant is growing up and I'm like, where's your blossoms? Oh, here's your blossom. Wait a minute. I didn't want watermelons. You're not supposed to be a watermelon. You're supposed to be a tulip. I thought you were a tulip. Well, stop being a watermelon. It's not possible. So understand God has made you you. And hopefully you have enough self-awareness before you marry to know who you are. And often we don't. But he doesn't either. And so you kind of work at it together when you get married, if you get married young, and you grow in your self-awareness and they grow in their self-awareness and there's acceptance and there's communication with, I really think this is who I am. I really think this is what, gives me life. I don't really like this. This isn't my thing. I remember for me, we went to a very conservative church that loved Bill Gothard, if you remember him. And I never liked Bill Gothard. I didn't like his teaching. I didn't like the way he looked. I didn't like anything about Bill Gothard. So I didn't go. And I wanted to work part-time. And I went to a church that was very Bill Gothard homeschool moms. And I wasn't a Bill Gothard homeschool mom. And I tried hard to fit into that mold. And I felt like I just couldn't, I could be me. They would let me be me. I was afraid to be me, right? And finally, I just said, I'm not going to build an outfit I don't like, and I'm not wearing those kind of clothes, and I'm not homeschooling my kids. And actually, it was a good thing I said that because it helped other women feel freer to be who they were. But sometimes they're trying to make you into someone you're not. And it's important for you to know who you are in order for you to flourish, right? If you're a watermelon, you're going to be a real ugly tulip. You're just not going to be a tulip. And if someone's shaming you for that, this is really important for you not to let that happen because that's not who you are. You're not a tulip. And so I remember working with a woman who was a very outgoing, woo woo kind of woman at the games. I'm not that kind of person. I'm much more quiet, introverted, but she was very loud. She'd raise her hands during praise and worship. She'd go forward for an altar call. She married this really tight-laced introvert kind of husband, and he felt embarrassed by her extroversion. So he, criticized her and criticized her and criticized. Over the years, you could just see her shrinking into like just this submissive, passive, non-person person until she almost disappeared. And she couldn't anymore because it was bringing death to her, not the good kind. It was killing her spirit. She needed to be who God made her to be. And she was a full-blown sunflower. He was trying to turn her into a little red rose. And that's not who she was. And so be who you are. And that's your work to do. That's your work to do. All right. If you asked me, how are you? I'd say fine. Deep inside, I am sad all the time. I've worked to rebuild my life, went back to study, part-time job, made new friends, go to church. I can't leave yet, and it's a pain I carry every day. I have tried to change my thoughts, journal, quiet time with God, talk with friends, counselor, and the pain does not go away. How can I get better? So I would ask you to ask yourself, what's the pain trying to tell you? It's sort of like the pain in your side. Like I'm eating right, I'm exercising, I'm doing everything, but the pain isn't going away. So the pain is giving you a message that you need to pay attention to, right? And I would listen. So here would be a couple exercises I would give you. I would say, I would personify the pain. So I'd say pain, okay, I've done everything that I thought would make you happy, but you're still not happy. You're still poking at me. You're still telling me I'm sad, I'm in pain. So what's wrong? Why are you still so unhappy? So the psalmist, this is the self-reflection piece that I talked about, the self-awareness, I'm in pain. Well, the self-reflection in Psalm 42, he says to himself, why are you downcast, O my soul? He's asking himself, he's reflecting. I'm aware I'm in pain, I'm downcast. Why? What do you have to say to me? And then I would do a couple things. One is I would just be still and listen. And the other thing is I would just start writing. And you could start writing with your non-dominant hand. So I'm left-handed. So I would take my right hand and I would write whatever and so it takes a little longer to write with your non-dominant hand. But sometimes it's weird. But sometimes things come out that I don't think I would have thought of with this hand. I don't know why. So you might want to just start writing whatever comes out and don't censor it. Just let whatever comes out. Or you could pretend like you're having a conversation with pain. So you could name him or her, pain. What do you have to say to me? Tell me. And just listen, or even get in the chair and pretend you're pain and just say, okay, I'm the pain. What do I feel? What do I see? And it might be that you're doing all these things, rebuild your life, went back, but there's things that you're not doing or beliefs that you have. Like maybe you think, I'm sad because I don't have a man in my life who loves me, right? And that may be true. But if you leave, you're still not going to have a man in your life who loves you. So what do you need to do with that pain? Do you need to find friends who love you? Or is it, I can only not have this pain if I have a romantic relationship with a man who loves me, right? So that might give you some insight. It might be a false belief that I have to have a man who really loves me and values me in order for me not to feel sad. And is that true? So it might uncover some of those beliefs that you have. All right. And last, you might need to go to some therapy to help you figure that out too. All right. you might be depressed in a kind of a dysthymia kind of way. So there's this depression called dysthymia, DYSTEMIA, I believe. I'm not sure. Jess, if you can Google it, put it in the chat. It's kind of a low-level depression that's just kind of with you. You can still function, you can do everything, but it's still kind of there. And you might even trace it further back from your marriage. So check that out too. After reading your book and last workshop, I'm preparing to leave well. I have not found a job. I've asked for help with my resume, practice interviews, good professional references, and nothing. I feel that rejection is harder and harder because I've been rejected so long with my husband, and rejection at job means to continue to stay with him. I am the roommate now, and he is very abusive. Yeah, I am so sorry. I would hate to have to be looking for a job right now. It's really tough. It's just the whole process is very grueling and stressful, and it's labor intensive. So if you have a professional resume, I might think about hiring a recruiter, somebody who does that for you, who starts vetting opportunities for you and kind of can do that. That might be it, because you don't have to pay them. Usually the company pays them to find the right person. And if you can put your resume with different people, you might also, if you're professional, contact a temp agency. They may have some temporary positions for you so that you can at least get out and start building some current experience or references. And sometimes if you do a really good job at a place, they'll then bring you on as a full-time employee. You might want to, I don't know what your skills are, but you might want to look at some internet jobs like Fiverr and other kinds of things that, you work for them and they bring people to you and you negotiate that kind of work for them that way. And I would just encourage you to trust God in this, because a no is painful. It's always painful when we get a no, but sometimes it's also a blessing. Like sometimes it's a blessing that you didn't get that job. You just don't know it because you don't know the toxicity in the workplace, or you don't know the destructive elements there, or you don't know that God has something else in mind for you. We don't know the future. It just feels painful right now. But to be able to kind of reframe it and say, God, I know you know what I need, and you know where I need to work. You know what will be life-giving to me, what kind of environment. And I need that because I don't have a home environment that does that. And I really need to be in a healthy place. And so I pray that you give me a healthy place to work, and just trust that those no's are not because you weren't good enough, but because God knew that that wasn't good for you. And just trust that process so that you're not feeling like, what's wrong with me? And you also might hire a professional coach if you have some money to do that, who can really review your resume, your interview skills, to see if there is something that you might be doing that causes that rejection, or give someone some red flags. And the other thing that you might do is circle back to the people who said no and just say, hey, thank you so much for the opportunity to interview with you. And is there anything that I could work on to improve my chances at the next interview that I do? And they may say, no, you are great, but we just had 500 applicants and it's really hard to choose. Or they might say, yeah, here's what you said that really caused us to press pause. And that would be helpful for you. Right. So I might do that with people that, you're not going to see them again. So it might be painful to hear the feedback, but it might be helpful for you so that you can self-correct. Just like that, you kind of get so far and then you keep not getting there, and you have to get the feedback that you need to self-correct and move into the next. So we had this self-awareness, we have this self-reflection, right? And then we might invite others to reflect, to give us feedback so that we can make some self-correction. So if I can't figure this out on my own, you better believe I'm taking pictures of it and sending it to some of my artist friends. And if any of you are artist friends, please feel free to email me and tell me what I need to do to fix that eye. So that can be helpful. And then you can make those corrections and move forward. All right. When in the midst of a divorce that is ongoing, in other words, we'll go to a hearing and the court date is way off. You feel like you have a shirt half on and half off. It gets tougher to trudge on. You're still married, but you sleep alone, live alone. Reminders of good times come back, and also the not good. Is there anything you can think of for a time as this? I do believe this topic today is good and may answer this question as it goes. I was married 30 years, then left him for the man. I was married 30 years, then left him for the man I'm currently divorcing. 5 years. We tried 3 times, patterns return. And now I find myself, due to a traumatic incident in our second year of marriage, questioning why I ended my 30-year marriage, even though he had good qualities as well. But like you said, no trust, no safety. Yeah, there's lots going on, but I'll just make some guesses because I don't know you. But I think it's very tempting when we're in the season of loss or we're walking away from something we know isn't healthy for us to kind of remember all the good things. Like we had a death in our family recently, and everybody's memorializing all the good parts of this person and not talking about the icky parts, and that's okay. And we do that. We kind of put the person on a little pedestal and remember all the good things that they did. And we want to do that. We want to have good memories if someone's dead. And sometimes when a marriage is dead, we kind of resurrect all the good things and the things we enjoyed, and we remember those things. And it's kind of tempting when we do that to kind of think, oh, why did I leave? It was really good. And we forget the bad things. And sometimes there are some really wonderful vacations that you took or moments that you had, but the toxic was really toxic. So there's people who are very charming in life, who can be very loving and very fun and very, we call it love bombing, and very seductive, and they're also very toxic. And so if you don't remember both, it's sort of like the addict. So if you've ever had an addiction or a problem with a substance like food or alcohol or drugs, it's very seductive, because when you're trying to stay away from it, it says, oh, remember all the good fun we had? Remember that Christmas party that we went to and got bombed? Or remember that glass of wine we had on the porch and it was so lovely to just relax? And it's all these seductive memories that come in that make you say, it wasn't that bad. I think I'll do that again. I think I want some of that. And so it's really important, especially when you're in that place of being tempted to forget the bad, is to kind of write it down for yourself. Like, why did I leave this relationship? Why has it been unhealthy? Why has it been harmful? What's toxic? And that would be true of a substance too. So if the, breakup with chocolate or the breakup with sweets or sugar or wine or whatever it is has been, tempting for you to go back, why don't you want to go back to that person? Why don't you want to go back to that way of life? Because I was an addict, because I was lying, because I wasn't true to myself, whatever it is. And remind yourself what that cost you. I remember working with an addict who was an alcoholic, and he was a very bad man when he was an alcoholic, did some terrible things. And one of the things is that he would actually go on Christian dating sites, luring Christian women, knowing that he could get away with stuff because they were Christians. And so he got sober, became a Christian, turned his life around. And I asked him, why do you still go to AA 3 times a week? Because he had been sober for 25 years. I said, why did you go to AA 3 times a week? He goes, I can never forget. I can never forget how bad I was, because it's still like, oh, Christmas is coming, and wouldn't it be nice to have a toast? Wedding's coming. He goes, I can't ever forget. And this is why the whole idea of forgetting sins is so ludicrous, because not just you shouldn't forget, but the person who's a destructive person shouldn't forget how awful they were when they were that way, so that they don't want to go back there. And his words were so powerful to me, like, I can't ever forget how bad I was. Not that I'm shaming myself and beating myself up. Christ has saved me. I'm a new man. But I don't want to ever forget what alcohol and that life did to me. So that's why it's so important that you do your work and remember what it was that you left and why you left, so that you don't kind of romanticize the good. All right. I have hopium. How do I stop it? I love him, and I want to keep some hope. I think it's really important that you understand what love is. Okay. Love is wanting the best for another person and letting them decide who they want to be. And sometimes love even lets people go, right? So I'm not sure, I don't know you, and so I don't know what you love. Sometimes we love being married, and we think, oh, I don't want to. So when you love someone, you seek their good. So what's his best good right now? For you to be there, maybe. Like if someone's dying with cancer, it's in his best interest maybe that I'm there, unless he's toxic to me and abusive to me, and then maybe it's not, because now I'm enabling him to do this even in his dying days, right? So I think, you have to decide what's best for him. So I think a biblical helpmate always does what's best, just like a good mother always does what's best for her child. Is her child going to always like that? No. So if you take away their phone at night because they need sleep or they need to do their homework and they're addicted to their phone, they're going to be really mean to you and they're going to be ugly and they're not going to like it. But a good mother does that anyway because she loves her child, even if the relationship is temporarily fractured because of her discipline, right? And so in the same way in a marriage, you're not disciplining your husband, but you are loving him. And so loving him seeks his best. So I don't know what you're hoping he'll change, but if he's caught in a sin and he's not willing to change it, is it loving him to continue to give him the perks of marriage when he's throwing gasoline or he's throwing destructive behaviors on it with no consequence? You know, you have to live with that. I don't, but I think you can have hope that maybe someday he'll come to his senses. But sometimes someone comes to their senses through hard consequences, right? So we talked about putting your hand on the hot stove. So here's the son, the prodigal father, the story Jesus tells about the prodigal son. Do you think the father loved the son? I think he loved him a lot. And the son was acting like a stupid fool. Give me all my money. I'm going to go, have some fun, Dad. And he gave him the money and let him go. Did he love him? Yeah. Did he love him? Yeah. And he let him go. He let him go do what he was going to do. He didn't say, oh, son, I love you so much. You have to stay with me so I can protect you and we can have this great relationship. He just let him go. And he learned through his wild and wanton living that this is stupid. I'm paying a lot of stupid tax. I wasted all my money and now I'm eating what the pigs eat. Right? And that woke him up. And he came back a changed son. Right? And the father didn't stop loving him, but he didn't cling to him. And I think sometimes in marriage, we're clinging to someone because we want them to love us, because we love the idea of being married. And we're not really agape loving them and sometimes letting them go and fall down so that they can learn that they've been foolish. So you have to think through that. But I think it's hard to face that maybe I've loved being married and loved having the whole picture of marriage and that happy ending kind of fantasy hopium more than I've really loved him. What does loving a drug addict kid look like? Might mean kicking him out, right? So it doesn't mean enabling and coddling and putting up with destructive behaviors. It just doesn't mean that. You seem like you may have an answer to this. My marriage is severely destructive. Yet I want restoration eventually. The hardest is the financial abuse and destruction. He has asked that I deal with all the money, but then holds it against me and guilts or manipulates me to hand over more money. I've tried trusting him with his money and bills, and it proved I shouldn't have. In doing that, I now fear if we ever do get back together, his lack of paying his bills will bite me in the end. It could bite you in the end. So you have a couple choices. You can say to him, history shows that you haven't paid your bills. That doesn't seem to bother you like it bothers me. So there's lots of things I love about you. There's lots of things that worked well together, I assume, from what I'm reading. But this thing, I really believe in paying my bills on time and not being financially on the edge or over the edge. I believe in, paying people who did work for us. I believe in paying on my electric bill. I believe in those things. And we really have a clash of values here because you think it's more important for you to have fun on vacation, even if you can't pay your bills. I'd be specific on what that or gambling, money, and then it's okay for you to be in lots of debt. And that just eats at me. I can't do that. And see where he's at, because the Bible tells you that you can't have a marriage where two people don't walk together. Right? That's why he says, don't marry an unbeliever. Can an unbeliever and a believer be yoked together? Can light be yoked together with darkness? And so when they're talking about yoking, picture two animals that are yoked, because there's a farming culture in Bible time. So yoke, one thing goes over one animal, one goes over another, and then they are doing life together. They're pulling a plow. So you're pulling a family together. You're pulling your finances together. You're pulling life together, right? When you yoke with someone. And God says, don't yoke yourself with someone who's got different path than you on things that are important. So spiritually, he says, don't be unequally yoked spiritually. So if someone's saying, hey, I don't care about spiritual things, so I'm going to go this direction towards sin. And you're saying, I care about spiritual things and I want to go this way toward God, but you've got this big old yoke between you. There's going to be a lot of rubbing and a lot of clashing, and you're not going to be able to make progress. But it feels to me from what you're saying is that his values around money are very different than yours. That pleasure and spending money and using money for whatever he wants is more important to him than being responsible with money and having some security with money, which is important to you. And this is important part of understanding who we are and who we're marrying. So his values are different than yours. And so the same would be if you had a husband who was watching porn or, having affairs. His value of pleasing his flesh and satisfying his sexual urges, however they come, whenever they come, with whoever he wants, are more important to him than being faithful to a wife. Right? So you're going to be unequally yoked in some important values there. And it's not your job to change his values. It's his job. And this is why when he's doing things that really upset you because they're violating your values, right? And he's asking you to live by his values, or you're asking him to live by your values. And that's why God says, hey, check out who you're marrying with what direction they're going, what's important, what's most important to them, their values, so that you're going in the same direction. And somebody can say they value spirituality. That's what we'll talk about in the workshop, because their words say one thing, but their actions show another. So that's why it's really important to look at their actions. So his words might say, oh, yes, I want to be financially responsible, but his actions are not. Or yes, I want to be faithful, but his actions are not. So the bottom line is that you can't walk together peaceably in a relationship of any kind, business, even friendship sometime, when your values clash all the time. So what do? So you talk about it, and here's where you show love and grace. And you say, our values are very different, without saying, I'm right, you're wrong, or you're right, I'm wrong. Our values of how we think life works and what we want out of life are very different. You want the freedom to spend money how you want for whatever you want. And I want to be, really responsible and save money and, keep it in a bank or whatever, put it in CDs for retirement, whatever. And we argue a lot about that. And I don't see a compromise here. I don't see a solution. Do you? How we put this together so that we can walk together. Or so I think this is really important, because here's the conversation Jesus had with someone about this. If you think about the story about the rich young ruler, okay, the rich young ruler came to Jesus and he said, hey, what do I need to do to be good with God? And Jesus said, do the commandments. He goes, I did all that. And so Jesus knew this man's first love was money, right? It wasn't God, even though he said he followed the commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. So he's putting his test. All right, show me. Show me. It's true. Get rid of your money and come follow me, because I'm God's son, right? So if you're following all the commandments and you want a relationship with God, and that's what you're telling me, sell your stuff and come follow me. So Jesus is saying, what do you really value? Because you're saying, this man's saying with his words, I value a relationship with you. What do I need to do to have a close relationship with you? And Jesus says, do this. I did it. I follow the commandments. So Jesus is now putting it to the test. Show me you love God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength. Sell your stuff and come follow me. Well, I don't think I want to do that. And Jesus said, okay, go your way. And then it says, and he loved him. Woo, he let him go. He didn't try to force a relationship with someone who was just whitewashing words. But yet we try to do that because we're so anxious. We've got to save our marriage. We've got to save our man. We have to be honest. This is the direction I'm walking. I don't see you wanting to walk that direction. You might say you do. You might say you love God, but I see that you're watching porn, that you're swearing, you're using foul language, you're watching stuff that's your choice. You live your life as you see fit. I'm not trying to judge you. I'm not trying to say you're bad. I'm just saying it doesn't match what you say and what you do. doesn't match at all. And so I'm going to believe more what you do than what you say. And that's what the Bible tells us to do, right? John the Baptist confronted the Pharisees in Luke chapter 3, I believe, where he says, prove by the way that you live that you've repented of your sin and turned to God. Don't just talk about it. Show me. Show me. So I think those are the conversations that when you have choices to make, these are the choices you have to make, but sometimes it's loving someone and letting them go. I love you, son. I love you, child. But if you're going to continue to treat me disrespectfully in my house, and you're going to continue to leave your stuff all over the place and not pay your rent and expect me to treat you like you're 2 years old instead of 22 years old, you can't live here anymore. I love you, but you need to go. And those hard conversations are hard for us to do, because what we do is we suck it up, suck it up, suck it up, thinking we're being a good mother, a good Christian, good wife. And then we just, get out, I hate you. And we say something really ugly in a moment of anger and bitterness. And then we feel horrible and guilty. I'm sorry, I should have said that. And then we're in the same old dance over and over again. What if we just said, I love you, but you can't live here, or I can't live here? We can't walk together peaceably if we're going in two different directions. The Bible tells us that's true. Why is it so hard for us to accept that and admit that? All right, where are we in time? 10, 20. So are we okay? Can I stay for a couple more minutes for questions? All right. My girlfriend tells me I should look at all the good things from the past about my husband, the big picture, and not focus on the problems, porn use, deceptions, lack of intimacy with, etc. Should I be focusing on good past? How do I balance being positive and seeing reality? I think you need to see reality. I think you can be positive and see reality and see the negative, right? So I think the problems, it depends if they're current problems and they're not changed. These problems don't erase the good, but what they do is they make it impossible to have a relationship. So here's the picture I'm going to give you. Let's say you have a lovely home. It's lovely. And yet you have toxic mold, black mold. And your friend is saying, Sally, you're just so negative. Why don't you focus on that? You have a beautiful house. You have, 3,000 square feet. You have 4 bedrooms. You have 3 bathrooms. I would love to have that. Why are you just focusing on this mold problem? I mean, if somebody said that way to you, you'd laugh. You'd say, of course I have a lovely house, but I can't live in this house with this mold problem, right? But yet when she says it to you that way about your husband, you're getting all confused. Of course he has great qualities. That's why I married him. That's why I stayed married so long. But what he's doing is so toxic to our relationship. I can't ignore it. And he's not willing to change it. You live in a lovely home. You fix the toxic mold. Wonderful. Wonderful. And I'll show you how to do that in the workshop. If you can fix broken trust and safety, I'm all for that. I'm all for that. And I will work really hard with a couple, and I have worked really hard with a couple to rebuild trust and safety if both of them are willing to do it. But you cannot rebuild trust and safety with someone who's not willing to do it. And the work is hard, right? Sort of like having this beautiful house and you don't really want to spend the money to fix the toxic mold. You don't really want to do the work because you got to move out and you got to rip down the walls and you got to hire special people with hazmat suits or whatever it is. It's pretty bad. And they don't want to do that. Let's just pretend it's not here. And I'm getting sicker and sicker? No. Those are one of your choices. You have to decide. But that would be the metaphor I would use with your friend. All right. I am making the choice of reaching out to women's pastors at church concerning my a woman pastor at church concerning my psychologically abusive marriage. How do I begin that conversation, especially since my husband and I both attend the church together and he has managed to befriend and deceive a lot of the upper leaders? I don't want to badmouth him, but I have to speak my truth and develop an exit plan safely. So I would start the conversation with saying, I don't know your church and all that kind of stuff. So you might already know this, but if I didn't know this would be where I would start. I have some really hard things to talk about, and I want to understand the confidentiality system here before I start. So for me, if you're going to say some things that are really toxic or, stuff about your husband, you want to see where she's at in this and how she responds to even that. So is what I say confidential? So when you go to a professional counselor, they kind of give you papers to sign that you sort of know the rules of the game and what you're, you know, held in confidence and what you're not, and what happens here and what happens there. When you go to a pastor, it's really loosey goosey, and you don't know if she's going to go talk to the other pastors or the other people and kind of say what you said. So I would start there. For me, I would say, you know, I have some hard things to talk about, and I really like your help, but I'd kind of like to understand, is there a confidentiality policy here? Will anything I say be disclosed to anybody else? So let's start there and see how she handles that. And then when you talk about what happens at home, I would say I would not use the term psychological abuse. I would not use the term emotional abuse, because all those terms are loaded terms. Even the term depression is a loaded term. We all have pictures of, oh my gosh, she's depressed. Is she suicidal? We don't know exactly what that looks like or what that means. So I would say, think of incidents that you would determine are emotionally or psychologically abusive. So let's say, I'm going to make some things up. Let's say that he calls you names. Let's say he restricts your ability to have conversations with other people. He isolates. That would be psychologically abusive. Let's say he mocks you when you have feelings, like when you're crying. He will say, oh, you poor thing, you're such a baby, and he'll call you names that way. Let's say he forbids you from having access to the money. So whatever it is that you would call those psychological, emotionally abusive behaviors, I wouldn't call them that. I would name them. So I would say, you know, I'm having a lot of marriage problems, and I think I might have to leave the marriage because I don't feel safe. And this is why. My husband, when I, you know, wanted to visit my mother, she was sick with cancer, and he told me that my role was to be with him, and he wouldn't let me leave. And my mom died, and I never got a chance to say goodbye. When I ask him, you know, how much money we have saved for retirement, he won't let me have any access to the accounts. I have no idea whether he pays the taxes, whether we're behind in our IRS bills, but I noticed that we got a big credit card statement. I have no idea where he spent that money, but I'm in the dark there. So I would be very specific about what it is that makes you feel unsafe without using those terms, so that she gets a real clear picture of what it's like for you to feel unsafe, right? And then if you want her to share that with others, I think you can say, my husband is, you know, you've met him. He's very charming. He's very good with words, both positive and negative. He's excellent. And he's going to deny all this. He's going to deny what I tell you. And I'm not, so here's where the question, I'm not asking you to what? I'm not asking you to talk to him. I'm not asking you to save my marriage. I'm not asking you to blah, blah, blah. I'm asking you to, what are you needing from her? Why are you telling her? It would be really helpful for you to start with the safety for you in this relationship with confidentiality, describe in detail as if she were watching what's going on without using pejorative labels. My husband's a narcissist. He's a covert abuser. Don't use those labels, because people get suspicious when you use those labels that you've been listening to someone and you're getting brainwashed. Instead, just tell her what happened with real words. And then lastly, what do you want from her and what don't you want from her, right? And that's going to be really important. So plan it out, plan out that conversation so that you get the most out of it, and she can help you if she can. Or if you say, I want you to go do this, and she can honestly say to you, I don't think I can do that, right? Or if you ask her if confidentiality is there and she says, no, we're pretty open here, and, you know, we don't keep secrets, then I would be really careful what you tell her, because it's not. So give yourself safety, know what the boundaries are, and then know what you want from her and what you don't want from her. Okay. All right. One more question. Traditional teaching taught me to be a housewife, and I did not realize I was living with a covert narcissist until my 50s. And he took us to major debt without talking with me. He hid finances at work. I broke emotionally with trauma as we are divorced. How do I heal at this age with few work skills? Well, you have to do your work, you know, and I think this is some of the, I've gotten some kickback and criticism, not so much lately, because I think some people are turning around their ideas about this. But back when I started 10 years ago, really talking to women, and I would tell you, you have to do your own work, they would be like, that's not fair. You know, you're blaming the victim, and you are a victim. You are a victim, all right? But the same as if you got hit by a bus today, or you got shot by a burglar, and you're in intensive care, and you wake up and you've got work to do. Your body has to heal. You've traumatized. You might have to go to physical therapy. You've got work to do. It wasn't your fault, and you're not to blame, but you still have work to do. And that's why this chart has been so important for you to think about, because you could just stay in that intensive care feeling sorry for yourself about what happened to you. Or you could start doing what you need to do to get out of that hospital and get strong and healthy again, right? And so I would encourage you to do that. Second of all, you are minimizing the skills that you have by being a stay-at-home mom. You are minimizing those skills. So I would think about all the things that you did as a stay-at-home mom. What things did you do well that you organized? I organized my kids, homeschooling. I, researched this. Whatever you researched, whatever bills you paid, whatever, drove. I mean, you could be an Uber driver, for goodness sake. There's things that you can do that don't have big skills. If you have a car, you can be an Uber driver. You can be a customer service rep if you're good with people. People are not good with people anymore. The younger generation have lived on their cell phones, and they're not always as good with social skills as older people are now, because they didn't get them and they don't learn them. So reliable, I'm dependable, I'm not encumbered by small children. There's a lot of pluses that you have in the position you're at. So don't sell yourself short at being invaluable to somebody who might really value you. There's a lot of internet jobs these days where you can do work from home, and you can do surveys, and you can do, if you're a good, reader, you can read for mistakes on things and all those kind of things. So I wouldn't sell yourself short that you're not employable or that you can't find something. I would look at all your strengths and all your capacities of what you did while you were a stay-at-home mom, all the things you're capable of doing, even if you don't have the, degree after your name. What are you capable of? From your 20s to your 50s, what skills have you developed? And then think about what jobs might need those skills and start looking. All right. I think you know what you need to do. It's scary. It's scary. And so the second thing I would really encourage you to do is I would encourage you to join Conquer. So we're doing this workshop. Conquer is a membership that we have for Christian women who are in destructive marriages. The majority of women are around your age, because sometimes it takes 20 or 30 years to wake up and realize what's really going on. It's like the frog in boiling water. You thought it was okay, and then it wasn't okay, but you didn't know what to do. And then you just grew numb, and you didn't realize it was that bad. And now you're trying to jump out of the pot, and you find yourself in a very cold, lonely space. And so you need some support. So Conquer is a large international support group that we have for women, Christian women who are in destructive marriages or getting out of one, so that you do have that support, you do have that guidance, you have specific steps that you can take to heal and to grow. We can't do the work for you, but we can outline the work for you and give you that pathway through video teaching, through support, through Zoom calls, through question and answer times like this, but in a completely private setting so that you're not in a public place. So we're going to open our doors to Conquer. We only open twice a year, and we will open after the workshop for those of you who might be interested in attending. If you don't really know anything about me, you might want to go to my website and check out the Quick Start Guide. That's lesliebernick.com. The Quick Start Guide is a kind of a quick start to see if you really are in a destructive marriage, or is it just difficult, or is it just disappointing? And that Quick Start Guide will kind of help you. And then there is an invitation to join the Conquer waitlist if you'd like to be invited before the workshop to join Conquer. We'll be doing that, I think the day before or something like that, so that people who are already ready and know they want to join can do that. But that might be something that you want to do also to get the support you need. And there's lots of women in your shoes that are starting for the job market in the very first thing, and they give you all kinds of suggestions. And we actually have videos from women who have gotten jobs and how they did it. So that might be helpful for you as well. All right. Well, I am traveling back home today to sunshine and warmth. It's been cold here the last 2 days, like 30-degree cold. So I haven't gotten my walk. I definitely need to do that. That's how I got so much painting done yesterday. It was so cold here. It was like 32 degrees, and it was even snowing. And I'm like, I got to get back to Phoenix where it's like 70, and I got to get some warmth on my skin. So that's where I'm going, and I'll be there for a couple of weeks. So I'll be doing my workshop from there, and then I'll be back up here for the summer when it gets to be 120 in Phoenix. It's nice and cooler here, 90 degrees. It's still cooler than 120. So anyway, hopefully by Monday I'll have her eye fixed, and you'll be able to see that. If any of you have any tips, let me know, and take care. God bless. Talk to you Monday. Oh, Monday we're going to do a Facebook Live. Let me tell you what we're going to do it on. Let's see. Oh, so it kind of sequences off of this one. How do you let go? So we talked about the rich young ruler. Jesus let him go. Jesus let Judas go. How do you love someone and let them go? So we're talking some more about that on Monday. All right. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.